In today's show, the Trailblazers are headed out on a 5-game road swing. All eyes will be on Scoot Henderson, and they might have reached the sweet spot where losing is still winning. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's program, we're going to preview the Blazers' 5-game road swing through Chicago, Charlotte, Atlanta, Memphis, and Houston. Get you updated on the injury reports, what I am going to be watching for on that road trip. Spoiler, Sterling Scoot Henderson. And plus, a message from a listener that kind of piqued my interest that I think the Blazers have found a bit of a sweet spot where they can lose these games. They've kind of settled into a space where losing these games is not detrimental, just based on the reality of their situation. We'll talk about the reality of the situation and check in on the standings as well. We got a full show for you today, Thursday, February 26th program. Let's get into it. Blazers heading out on a 5-game road swing, and unfortunately, that means we have to talk about the injury report. Deni Avdija is out, not going to play for the first of those games. It begins Thursday in Chicago. Deni Avdija out. Shane Sharp obviously out, probably likely for the rest of the season. Caleb Love not making the trip. He's on ice with the G League team. Then the other two names on the injury report, Rob Williams, still questionable with what they're still terming right foot soreness. No clarity on what exactly that is. And Jan Hansen, who was... he was with the Remix on Tuesday and unable to play with the Remix, but he was designated as G League assignment. Now he is back with the NBA team, and he is designated as having mid-back soreness, but he was unable to play in the G League game, so he's clearly been dealing with something. Played for the Remix on Sunday, and now is still just questionable heading into Thursday's game. You know, I think what we saw was the Blazers' sort of general comfort level in playing small. They didn't bring Hansen to the gym just as a absolute break the glass in case of emergency type of insurance on Tuesday. And so I think they'll go into Chicago, who is pretty small based on their injuries. No Zach Collins. And their boy Sticks is also out as well. Jalen Smith. They just don't have a lot of size. So the Blazers can comfortably go small starting the road trip against Chicago. Charlotte's not super big either. You could probably get away with it there. I really don't think it's until you get to Houston that it matters, because Atlanta and Memphis, you could probably get away with a fair amount of small ball as well, but we will see the sort of availability of the Blazers' two backup centers. It is going to be a lot of Don Verklingen and the wings. They're going to lean into their reality of the roster, which is they have some interesting defensive wings, and they'll see if they can pull out some wins. Let's talk about the games, though. The Bulls have lost 10 in a row. They kind of finally decided to get bad at this year's trade deadline after years of refusing to do so, and they may have finally done it with some injury luck to go along with it as well. But Chicago, losers of 10 straight. Certainly a winnable game for the Blazers against a not particularly good team. Obviously, when these two teams met in Portland earlier this year, Bulls won on a buzzer beater, but it's just an entirely different roster. They don't have Nikola Vucevic, a game winner. He ain't around. It's Kobe White, who had a big three in the final 30 seconds of that game. He ain't around. It's a whole new crew. I think Kevin Huerter maybe even scored in the fourth quarter of that game. Gone. Then from Chicago on to Charlotte. Hornets are pretty good, right? Since January 1st, the Hornets have the best offense in the NBA and the 7th best defense in the league. They're 19-7 in that stretch. it just works now. They started off the year as in sort of a familiar spot as being a bad basketball team, as they've been for many moons. They've been hooping in 2026. That's a good team. That's the first of a back-to-back in Charlotte, followed by Sunday in Atlanta. The Hawks are just like supremely mediocre. They are just a supremely mediocre team. If they do not have Jalen Johnson, who left their most recent game with a hip injury and is listed as questionable for their next one. The Blazers don't play till Sunday, so the Hawks can play a couple times before then. If they don't have Jalen Johnson, who's an all-star and very, very good, they're awful, right? Dyson Daniels kind of turned into a pumpkin this year. He just can't make three-pointers anymore, and they're not the special team people thought they would be. Certainly, as a game the Blazers could lose, particularly if Jalen Johnson not available, then if JJ is not there, then that's a bad Hawks team, and if he is there, that's probably a pretty competitive game. So that's the second night of a back-to-back in Atlanta. Then the Blazers will hang out in Atlanta for the day and head on to the following day, and then head on to Memphis, and then they'll play Memphis on Wednesday, Memphis is bad on purpose now. I think that's what this is. They've lost 12 of 15 and 3 in a row. They've had some bad injury luck. A really brutal injury for Vince Williams. Get well soon. Got bumped off the court and tore its ACL against the Rockets, and kind of a dicey decision from Atari Eason. I don't know if that was malicious, but it was not. It was just not a good play. Bumped him in a fast break away from the ball, and Vince Williams fell over and towards ACL. But add it to the list. Like, Memphis has had injuries up and down the roster all year long, and then obviously they traded Jaren Jackson Jr. kind of pulled the plug. They're a team that is no longer interested in winning, and I think they will accomplish that. More on that in just a moment. And then the road trip concludes with the Rockets, who are a good team with terrible vibes. They're a good basketball team. I maintain they're still a good basketball team. They're not as special as they were when Steven Adams was healthy, because he turned their strength into a superpower with his offensive rebounding, as they go from this is a very good offensive rebounding team to like a world historic offensive rebounding team. They're not that anymore, but they're still good. They just have very bad vibes because and maybe no one in league history has been able to bring in sort of just like naturally negative vibes, quite like post Oklahoma City Kevin Garnett has been able to bring in the bad vibes with him wherever he goes. That's the trip, and I think a couple things here. This comes from, I think Chicago's winnable. Charlotte is a tough game, but certainly the Blazers could hang. It depends. If Shane Sharp's not going to play, we don't have an update on Denny's situation. I would say, typically, I think I would be critical here to say, we just don't know but I actually don't think that's the case with Denny Avdia. I think the real truth is that they know they need to give him time, and they probably have a target, right? I don't think he'll play. If I had to guess, Wednesday at Memphis would be the earliest he would come back, but certainly he could come back anytime after Thursday against Chicago. But that's my guess, is that they'll try to hold him out until at least Wednesday against Memphis, and maybe even after that, right? If they feel like they can squeak by a bad Memphis team without him, they give him as much time as they possibly can to see if he can just get his body right. Obviously, we don't know, but instead of this being hey, why don't we have a timeline? My read on this Denny situation is they're just feeling it out. They thought he was going to be right, and then he wasn't. He almost had he had a very long stretch of not playing basketball. He played very little basketball over the stretch of 2.5 weeks, and then he comes back and basically has a very limited contact flare up and took himself immediately out of the game after a minute. So they want him to get right. They want him. There's no reason to go early. So I think they'll be cautious with him. But I bet they thought they were being cautious with him in the past, and it just didn't work. Usually I would complain about no timeline. I bet they don't. I bet they realistically can't say. I mean, they could say he'll be reevaluated in a week, I guess. That would be clarity, but they don't do clarity. I'm over it. I'm not asking for clarity from this franchise anymore. Just keep it moving. I want to talk about so I think these games are winnable. Chicago, Charlotte, Atlanta's a winnable game. Memphis is a winnable game. Houston is, the Blazers have beaten Houston this year, but not. I don't think if they're as healthy as they are right now, as they are going into the Chicago game, Houston is end of a road trip against a good team on the road. That's a very hard game. But I think the first four, even as they're currently constructed, are conceivably winnable. But like so much of this hinges on kind of who can step up and kind of fill some of the voids. And the number one person I am watching to see if they can step up is Sterling Scoot Henderson. Let's talk about that, and let's talk about the Blazers' sweet spots and a little bit about Memphis and the Blazers to go along with the Blazers' sweet spot in the second segment. Join me there, won't ya? First, though, I'd like to welcome you to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft with 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, or Cotton Candy. There's something for everyone. The board is set. The flavors are ready, and I've got my number one pick for the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. It's berry. I'm going with old reliable, big, bold berry flavor, slightly sweet, very fruity. It's the classic mixed berry taste. 5-Hour Energy says it's got notes of raspberry and blackberry. I just know that is the familiar 5-Hour Energy shot that it's sugar-free and gets you going so you can go about your day and you're not going to have a crash. You're going to get your zero sugar boost. Plus, you know, I don't want to expand my boundaries too much, but if you do, there's some sleepers in this energy draft. Or in this 5-Hour Energy draft. The newcomers. Confetti Craze could be a sleeper in the draft. Fruity Rainbow, Cotton Candy, it's all possible. So if you want to find your new flavor and figure out who's your number one pick, you can go to 5hourenergy.com and find your 5-Hour Energy shots. They're also available on Amazon. Today's program is also brought to you by Game Time. It is the NBA season. It's the stretch run. There's 25 games left. There's nothing like being in the arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast and without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. Here's how it works. Pull up the Game Time app, pick an upcoming NBA game, and you can get tickets locked in within minutes. I like the Game Time app because it is clean, simple, and very easy to navigate. What do you want to go to? Search it in the app. Bang, comes up in seconds. The venue's going to pop up on your phone, and then what you see is what you get pricing. It's all in upfront pricing, no surprise fees at checkout. Quick, intuitive, and stress-free from start to finish. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. That's $20 off your first purchase with the code LOCKEDON, locked on. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not gametime.com. All right. Thanks for making this show your first listen. If you're living the everyday lifestyle, make it official. Go join the Locked On Everydayer Club for $5 a month or $50 a year. You get access to an ad-free audio version of this podcast. It's Locked On Blazers without the interruptions. Plus, you can hop in our members-only Discord and chop it up with me, talk hoops with me and your fellow Blazers fans. More on the link in the show notes, lockedonblazers.supercast.com. Okay, like I said, I think this, for the most part, I think Houston is a legitimately very tough game. Charlotte has been very good recently. That's a hard game. Chicago, Atlanta, Memphis, even as the Blazers currently constructed, even without Denny and even without Shaedon Sharpe, and potentially without Rob, we'll see. Like, these are winnable games. Obviously, like, the Blazers are shorthanded, right? I don't mean to say like they should win. Like, I just watched them lose by 54 to Houston. I watched them win a game where they only scored 92 points against the very, very, very shorthanded Suns team. Like, I'm not confused, and I'm not. Although I am subject to recency bias, I know they played pretty well against Minnesota. But like, the pendulum swings back and forth, right? But I do think that while these games are winnable, like, for me, it's more about how they do it and like how they approach it. And I'm all eyes on Sterling Scoot Henderson. I don't expect him to start. That might get a little bit frustrating by the end of the season. It's like, just give him the ball and let him play 33 minutes. What are we doing? But it seems like he's going to play at the end of games, and that matters more to me than who at the beginning of games. As long as Scoot's on the court, if the game's in the balance in the fourth quarter, I will not. Scout's honor, I will not complain. I was never in Boy Scouts. I didn't do Cub Scouts. That's stolen valor. I apologize for those of you out there who are indeed in the Scouts program, I guess, if you care about that. I don't really apologize. I'm stealing your valor. Scouts honor. In any case, like, if Scoot's on the court at the end of the games, that's all that really, really matters to me. But like, so much of this is, I know that, and they have other ways to win. Like there's a formula, but that doesn't involve Scoot Henderson being like their best player or whatever. Although I think Drew Holiday's kind of struggled the back half of the season. He also had a monster game in Utah right before the break and like showed that he can still just like, hey, we need a win. I'm gonna go do it against a team that's not very good. Jeremy Grant is capable of having a 25-point night, although he would probably need to make something like 13 free throws in order to get there at his current rate. Although I guess he could make a bunch of threes while getting fouled. You could have like four 4-point plays and get himself above 20 points. But like, I know that the math that only gets you to 16. I'm talking he'd also score some other points, y'all. Just work with me here. Donovan Clingan's had some good nights recently, and he could just mash the offensive glass and have like some, have a Barbara Walters, the 2020 games, and get the Blazers there. Tumani Kamara could get hot shooting. They have other processes, but they just don't have many guys who you right now on the roster currently healthy that you can give the ball to, and they can run pick and rolls and both get their own shots and get other guys involved. Now, Scoot might not be super good at that right now in his career. But if there's ever been a time you just kind of turn the keys over to him and say, hey, let's see what you can do, because there's no downside here. It's now. I think Scoot has looked... I thought Scoot right away, coming out of off his injury, I thought he looked pretty good. I think he's kind of settled in over the last couple games of, just not the efficiency hasn't been there. It's like he's having good games, right? But he's not having these like super impressive games just because of the finishing, right? Some of the 3-point shooting and some of the layup making, like Scoot Henderson becoming a good finisher is his path. I think he'll be a decent enough 3-point shooter. Like he'll be in the slightly below average. I don't think he's gonna be horrible as a 3-point shooter. I think that I think we're out of the woods for horrible. He might not be elite ever, but I think we're out of the woods for horrible. But it's the finishing. He's got to become a guy who can finish. There was times in a couple games this year where he's been really good at getting to the free throw line. Craft getting to the free throw line, make a couple more layups. That's Scoot's path to being a legitimately good offensive player. Mix that with some pick and roll stuff. Hope he gets some chemistry going with running pick and rolls with Donovan Clingan. Although those two might be a weird pick and roll pairing, but if there's ever been a time to find out how weird it is now. I also think the Blazers are going to play a bunch of small ball, and I do think playing small helps Scoot a little bit because the middle of the court will be open with the small ball. Like they try to keep the middle of the court open with Clingan. Like if you watch, there are times when the read is after Clingan kind of pops, or if they run those delay actions or whatever it is, without getting too jargony. If they run those actions where Clingan is at the top of the key and he makes a pass to one side or the other, or runs a dribble handoff one side or the other, often Clingan won't roll. He'll stay out, and that's to give his guy who's coming off those DHOs, those dribble handoffs, a chance to get downhill without the center being in the way. And then other guys will cut and make those reads off of them. They will intentionally keep Donovan Clingan out of the paint sometimes to keep the middle open. But when they go smaller, it's even more natural to get guys out of the paint. And Scoot with an open paint, it's not like they're spreading shooters around him, but there could be some lineups actually where there's decent shooting around Scoot with Vit Krejci and Jeremy Grant and Drew Holiday if they lean into being small and in certain ways. There's a world where there's Scoot and some three okay shooters around him, and then like Sita Soko or Chris Murray or whatever, or Tumani. Throw Tumani and you get a fourth shooter. I think you could run 4. I think you could run 4+ shooters. You'd be a little small, but 4+ shooters and Scoot, and like I don't know, plus is maybe not the wrong 4 somewhere around league average shooters, slightly right around league average shooters and Scoot. I think that's a path. I think they're going to play small. We'll see on Rob Williams. I'm just so nervous about Rob Williams popping up on an injury report with a lower leg injury and a foot injury, and then like the soreness has been a real curse for the Blazers. Drew Holiday had a sore calf and missed whatever it was several months. Shaedon Sharpe had a sore calf. Now he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks with a stress reaction in his fibula. Soreness is I am scared of soreness in a way that I wasn't in the past. But I just, so much of me during these 5-game stretch can be locked into how they operate and really how Scoot operates. Scoot taking the next step. For me, the in a perfect world, it would be the same thing. Watching Scoot try to take the next steps, playing next to Denny and playing next to Shaedon Sharpe, and playing next to Tumani and Donovan Clingan and sprinkling in some of the vets with Jeremy Grant and Drew Holiday and like being whole and climbing in the standings. But that might not really be realistic right now because of just the bad luck of the Blazers injury stuff and the way it has all shook out. And luck is just an unfortunate truth of sports, and the Blazers are dealing with it. But that's what I'm going to be locked in on. The other thing I'm going to be locked in on is those standings. Let's check in on the standings. Let's talk about the sweet spot for the Blazers. We will do all of that to close the show. Join me in that third segment, won't ya? First, though, let's talk Indeed. Workplace chaos? You might have that. Deadlines stacking up? You might feel those. Inbox overflowing? Don't we all see that every day? And then, to make matters worse, the one position you have to fill at your place of work is still sitting open. So that's why when the pressure's on, you need the right hire, and you need Indeed sponsored jobs. It's going to help you reach people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's the stat that says it all. During this ad read, I'm going to talk to you for about a minute, and companies like yours will have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners to this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support your show by saying you heard about Indeed on this here podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. Portland came out of the All-Star break 2.5 games behind the Warriors and effectively tied with the Los Angeles Clippers. They were tied for ninth in the 9-10 spot with the Clippers, and at the time, with Scoot Henderson coming back and the sort of team getting healthy for the stretch run of the season, it appeared. Shaedon Sharpe had missed 4 games heading into the break, so maybe we were being a little bit hopeful. I guess we were naive at the time, but it looked as though the Blazers were going to have a chance with the way the schedule is going to break out and the teams that were in front of them having their own injury woes. We're still without Steph Curry. That like climbing into 8th in the West was legitimately on the table. They were 2.5 games back of Golden State, effectively tied with the Clippers. Now here we are 1 week later. They are 3 games back of Golden State and effectively tied with the Clippers. They haven't gone anywhere. What's changed is the Blazers' reality. Denny Avdija is out sort of indefinitely, could be short term, could be long term. We don't know, and maybe they don't know, and maybe he doesn't know, right? I think that's all. It's all up in the air, and Shaedon Sharpe is pretty much. I think you can just say he's done for the regular season. Realistically, based on the way the press release came out, it would be surprising if we see Shaedon Sharpe again this year. It would be a pretty big surprise to me. I don't think. It's not over for them climbing up in the standings. Like I said, what if Scoot Henderson, what if he figures it out, right? What if he does make a couple more layups over the next 6 weeks and he does get to the foul line and small ball works and Donovan Clingan continues his ascension and Jeremy Grant falls down so much that he does indeed shoot 12 free throws a game and Drew Holiday stops turning the ball over almost every 7th touch and instead knocks it down to every 17th touch and they're in business, right? I don't know if it's that simple. I guess if Jeremy Grant did average 13 free throws a game, the Blazers probably would be pretty good. I think that's true. Because you'd get easy points that way. I think based on the reality and kind of based on the way we've seen them play, they played really well against Minnesota, but they lost that game. But they played well in that game. I think they could climb in the standings, but before where it felt like it was on the table, now it would feel like a pretty impressive feat. Right now it would be like, oh wow, they kind of surprised. Look at this group. Look at Chris Murray and Sidi Sissoko making it happen. Look at Vit Krejci settling in and making threes and giving the Blazers that push to end up 8th in the West. It would be a surprise, right? It would be a fun story, right, over these final 25 games, but it'd be a bit of a surprise. So. Well, I don't know that I'm as locked in on looking at the Blazers climbing up the standings. I was sent an email this week, and you can email me, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. But the best place to reach me, quite frankly, is in the Discord. Join the Everydayer Club. I'm in there. To ask your friends who have already joined. I'm in there chatting it up. I'm a yapper. I'm in there yapping, y'all. I'm shooting off little chats on my phone. I'm mixing it up. But Scott, a longtime listener, sent me this sort of idea that the Blazers are kind of in a sweet spot where they could lose and it wouldn't be that bad because, they're effectively tied with the Clippers. They lose, they move, the Clippers move past them in the standings. The Blazers get slightly elevated lottery odds. And while, they'll basically end up with a sort of, effectively the same path. Assume they finish 10th in the West because the Clippers do end up passing them. But like Milwaukee, who's suddenly competent and has won 8 of 10. If Milwaukee, who's only has 2 more wins than the Blazers, but is tied in the loss column. If the Bucks end up passing the Blazers, if Chicago ever wins games, they're 4 up in the win in the 4 up in the win column. 4 back in the win column. The Blazers have 4 more wins than Chicago, so that seems unlikely. But like the Blazers could probably pass the Clippers. They could they could probably slip below the Clippers. They probably slip below Milwaukee if Milwaukee keeps winning and Giannis actually plays games and they try to make the playoffs. I don't know if Milwaukee will do that, but maybe, right? Maybe they will. Who knows? So there is a world in which the Blazers just like, hey, they lose Chicago, they lose Charlotte. This road trip looks terrible. It doesn't matter. They're locked into 10th. And here's how locked into 10th they are. They are 6 games ahead of Memphis right now. They are 7 games up in the win column ahead of Memphis. 6 games in the standings, but 7 games up in the win column on Memphis. So the Memphis would have to win 8 more games than the Blazers down the stretch. So I think the Blazers are basically 2 wins away from being stone cold locked into 10th. If they lose out, if they go 2-23, the Grizzlies would have to go 8-17 over their final 25 games to get 8 wins, and that would be if the Blazers slowly but surely go winless, right? Obviously, the Grizzlies could win more than those 8 games, but let's say like the Blazers like truly start to hit the tank. Memphis, like, and not in the intentional term, but just like stink. They stink and they struggle. Memphis is 8-19 over the last 27 games, and that is dating back to December 22nd when they were just a different basketball team. They're significantly worse than they were back then, and they have struggled since then. And they have less incentive to win. They have tried, I just don't think there's any world in which the Blazers, even if they lose, they could lose out. They could legitimately lose out for the remainder of the season and probably still finish 10th in the West, because of the teams behind them and the sort of their incentives, which doesn't really maybe speak well to the NBA's current situation, but. Like the Blazers aren't going to lose out, right? They're gonna win, something like 45% of their games. Like I think their floor is something like 43% of their games for the remainder of the year. Like they're gonna beat up on these bad teams in March when they play some teams that aren't really that locked in to winning games and maybe are really locked into losing games. So like they can't fall out of this. There's just like the math does not. I've been saying that their floor is 10th for weeks. If you're shout out to my everydayers who know that I've been saying that, but like even just doing the math now with 25 games left for Portland, 25 games left for Memphis, I think the Blazers could go 0-25 and still probably make the play-in if they win 4 of their final 25 games. And they're going to more than that, but if they go 4-21. I think they're a stone cold lock to make to 10th. Like I do not think it's just possible for Memphis. They're gonna win. They're gonna go something like 6-19 at the most over these final 25. Maybe they win a 9th game, but even then, Blazers win a 4th one of these. It's over for them. So it's over for Memphis. So like there is a part of me that says there's a no lose situation here. The Blazers trot out the group they have. If they end up stinking and falling in the standings, they do indeed get increased lottery odds. I feel like they're likely to finish in 10th regardless, just because of their health situation and the reality of the roster. So it doesn't matter if you finish in deep 10th or straight up close 10th. Like there's not exactly like a award for nobility. And actually there are rewards in the NBA for having a worse record than the Clippers, having a worse record than Milwaukee. It's to the tune of if really they were able to If Milwaukee were to pass the Blazers in the standings, the Blazers say falling below the Clippers is a lock, and they fall, and they fall below Milwaukee in the standings, Blazers would jump from like a 6% chance at a top 4 pick to a 14% chance at a top 4 pick. Again, those are long odds, right? It's not like this isn't like the real value tanking here necessarily, but I'm saying if things go super sideways, this is the sweet spot from listener Scott. If things go super sideways, yeah, they're fine. And if they don't, then it is proof of like, if they don't go sideways and they rip off a bunch of wins, it'll probably be because Tumani played well and Donovan Clingan played well and Scoot played well and Drew and Jeremy looks like useful players. And then you're going to feel good about what they might be in the future. So I do think that they have landed in this sort of like perfect world of turmoil and mediocrity where almost no matter what happens in these games, it's a good result. And I am someone who doesn't really, I'm not exactly like a rose-colored glasses individual. This is maybe the pessimist in me saying like, you know what? This is maybe actually what this is more like nihilism. But this is maybe the nihilist in me saying like, all they got to do is get to the end of the season because nearly all outcomes are positive. Nearly, like if they win, that's the point of basketball games, and they'll probably win on the back of some things that you can feel good about. And if they lose, there's a place where losing is benefiting them in the long run. And like the overall outcome, since they're still going to play a play-in game, was, hey, they increase their lottery odds. They'll still get 2 single elimination games and a chance to make the playoffs. Bang. Doesn't matter what you do what your regular season record is once you get there. You just get to play the games. And if it goes south for them, they'll have increased their lottery odds. If they end up winning 2 road games and make the play-in from the 10th seed, it'll be a freaking fun little weekend. And they'll play like the surprising first place Spurs in the playoffs. It'll be quite a It'd be quite a journey for some local media members to go get a beer at the Friendly Spot in San Antonio. That is going to do it for today's program. That's right. The sweet spot from listener Scott that turned into my journey into true stretch run nihilism. That's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube. Come back for tomorrow's show. We'll recap the Bulls game, the first game of the trip, and then tell your friends about the podcast. I appreciate you listening. I will talk to you soon.